Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Club Solutions Leadership Viewpoint. My name is Ralph Reyes, and today I'm joined by Michele Wong. She's the COO at Active Wellness. So, welcome, Michele. Thank you for being here.
Oh, pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, you bet. So, we're going to talk about leadership topics today and culture. But before we get into that, let's see if you could give everybody just a little bit of background about Active Wellness and about you. Tell us a little bit about Active first.
Great. Yeah, we're a fitness management company. We manage fitness and wellness anywhere, typically the business owner that is not their core business. So different types of installations, healthcare facilities, commercial health clubs, corporate centers, senior living and residential centers. So really anywhere somebody has a need to deliver fitness and wellness and wants the expertise, support in doing that.
How many sites do you guys have now?
We're about 35 installations across the country and one in Canada, physical locations. And then we do a lot of virtual and online programming, especially with our corporate partners where we reach globally in many cases.
Yeah. I was looking through your website. You guys have like the full breadth of services from in all verticals.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
it's an interesting way we got to be there and managing out of a commercial health club company, growing into management, expanding more in healthcare and wellness. So
Yeah.
it's been a great
Nice,
journey.
nice thing is I bet you're able to move across verticals, right? What you learn in one vertical, you can apply to the others and so on.
Yeah, honestly, Active Wellness is a 10-year young old company. I don't know how you want to say it, but we're a reboot of, Club One, our predecessor company. And that was really one of the goals and biggest visions in starting this organization is take the best of what we were doing in all of those verticals and bring them together as one unified organization and adapting them for our partners. And it's a big challenge, but when it works really well, and it's created a lot of growth opportunity for our team as well.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And how long have you been the COO of Active? Is it from the beginning of the transition from the other company?
No, I was actually director of wellness at Club One at the time. Got promoted to vice president of client services, and then vice president of operations, taking over oversight of all of the operations. And then 5 years ago was promoted to the COO.
All right, great. And man, so huge organization, a lot of people. I know it's hard to probably think of maybe one, but if you had a particular leadership challenge that you could talk about, what that was and maybe how you went ahead and tackled it.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges in this iteration, we kind of touched on it already, is like these different verticals and bringing one team together in terms of, who I look at as my expert leaders, our regional management team, and taking the expertise across those different verticals and coming up with the best solutions for our partners and different mindsets and different ways of thinking. Folks that had come traditionally from our commercially owned clubs were very much like, there's a structure and there's a system and there's a standardized way versus working in partner management. No two installations really look alike. They may not be the same model. Things are a little more flexible, and trying to find and navigate like where's the best in the way we operate in flexibility with the best in standardization, and getting everybody to, come together and appreciate those differences in a meaningful way. I mean, that was, I would say, probably one of the biggest challenges, and to really operate as one team versus siloed teams.
Yeah, because the people you're working with, I'm sure there's this huge spectrum of their knowledge of fitness and how they think things should be run. And those two things aren't necessarily the same thing, right? So I'm sure that that's a big part of it too, is like convincing people maybe that have a preset idea of what things should be in order to make it better.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about an installation where you're providing an amenity maybe to a corporate partner and everything is free and it's all about just, engagement versus club where, hey, I got to get to 150 membership sales this month, and how are we driving to get there and working through the team. And so the challenges are a little bit different, but finding the commonalities in those challenges and learning to collaborate and resource across what was for us very much this vertical structure.
Yeah. So I am talking to the award-winning Michele Wong, and you won you were the top 50 COO on the Icon Awards this year. So
Yeah.
congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
Yeah.
that's a big deal.
Yeah, I never set out with this organization or others to say I was like, destined to be the CEO or wanting that. I was just passionate about what I do. And I feel like, you keep doing what you love and have great people around you, then those kinds of things will come. But, they're sort of like the extra for it.
Yeah. Well, I know from the outside, I mean, you've been such a stable force for active wellness, and going back to Club One days, you've been, so stable and so steady. And yeah, just really appreciated how much you've contributed. So I would have voted for you for the
Thank
award.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so let's talk about culture now, okay, a little bit. And loosely, I mean, an easy definition that I use, and I didn't make it up, but is that culture is really how closely our management behaviors match our core values and our vision and who we say we are, right? And how closely our behaviors match who we say we are is really kind of what makes up our culture. So I'd like to know from you, like first, how do you define culture for active wellness?
Yeah, I think culture can mean so many different things, right? You can have different types of culture. If I had to pinpoint and say, what would you say is our type or our culture? It's really kind of like a clan culture, a teamwork, a family. So many of us have been with some iteration of this organization for, right, as you said, so many years
Yeah.
that, when you think about a family, right, you take care of your family, you're there for them, it's looking at things for the greater good of the team or the organization or the family. So I'd say that sort of has grounded us in who we are and our culture. And then to your point, how do you show up and how do you, execute on that? And there's positives to that. And then there can be negatives to that. If that's the strongest element of your culture, can create challenges.
Yeah. So what if I get what you're saying, that when you have a strong culture, then that means that there's going to potentially be conflict because you have defined a culture and there's a way of doing things, right?
Yeah, and then an expectation set with that culture, right? So our,
Yeah.
very again team focus, I think, we feel like we win when we find the best solution, no matter who that comes from, and we execute as a team. But sometimes, right, that means collaboration, that means, sharing of ideas, but can that slow the process down? Can that, limit you from getting to making a decision when sometimes a decision needs to be made more quickly? Or when you can't put that collaboration in place and you just have to execute on something, does somebody feel like you went against your culture because they didn't feel included? So, right, every culture has its ups and downs based on what that is, and just knowing, sometimes where the struggles can be in some of the key things that define your culture.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you do in the organization, Michelle, to get sort of that reinforce the culture down into the properties, into the staff, to reinforce it on that level? How have you done that?
Yeah. For us, communication is huge. I really stress with my team, always closing the loops on communication, over communicating if you can. And it comes back to like that why principle. If you're doing something or you're moving on something, why? Helping somebody understand, what you see or what you've got to deal with in your position or from your vantage point. And, that helps them grow, and that helps them, in some cases, maybe when they don't agree or 100% understand the direction, get on board and align with it. So I think it's communication, it's, understanding and giving people the why behind, what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah. And for people that are out there and trying to make their organizations better, are there any specific tools that you have to be able that you use with the team? Because you're spread out over the entire
Yeah.
country, right? So getting that message across. So if you were going to suggest something to people on how to do that effectively, what would it be?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked this at this time. I just recently, with my leadership team, did a personal SWOT analysis. I asked them, like when you've worked with somebody for 10 plus 15 years, right? Standard reviews, that doesn't mean anything, but as development tools. And when you ask them to take a step back and think about what's working, what's not, where are they struggling, how would they like to contribute to the organization more, what are some of their interests in exploring, you get a lot of things that you reinforce what you know, and a lot of ahas. Like I found where I think everybody has a voice and we're collaborative. A couple of people like, I don't feel like I'm getting my say in the meetings. I feel like, those with that seem to have the bigger challenges selling 150 memberships a month, that their voices are being heard a little bit bigger than maybe mine. So, it's giving everybody that opportunity in different ways to give you feedback and get a pulse on things. And then circling back and having a conversation. You never want to ask for information that you're not going to act on, or you're not going to, have a dialogue about, because that just feels like, why did you bother? Right. So I think that for me, I found that has been a good tool and a good way to go about opening up more dialogue than just some of the typical, what's happening in your world day to day, what challenge, what are the standard challenges you're facing. So yeah.
Yeah, so well, I think what's great is that you weren't assuming that you knew where their interests and aspirations were or how they were feeling, right? Because that changes over time. As we grow in our positions and we get older, we learn more things, our aspirations can change. So it's cool that you spent the time to talk about that with the team that you've worked with for a long time, not assuming you knew where they stood and where they wanted to be.
Yeah. And some of that is like there's this idea that there is culture and it's what grounds you and it's what people think they can count on and what you're founded on. But there's this piece of climate, right? How are they experiencing it right now, today, in the moment? We just signed 3 new contracts in 45 days. That's big for us and it's great. But your climate can shift quickly when people feel like there's so much going on immediately that, maybe that always wouldn't have happened in that short time frame. So it's good stuff. But then you have to check in and say, how are you doing? And, what do you need? And, where do we need to pull additional resource together to get it done? And then that team culture really helps when the climate starts to shift a little bit.
Right. And I think that's the behavior part of culture, right? And
Yeah.
that's where you're actually expressing and you're showing what your culture is by caring versus like, okay, well, here's our core values that say we care, but
Yes.
here's how I'm actually showing I care because I want to know how you're feeling and are you okay with big changes coming, but we'll get through it together. Are you doing okay? I think
Yeah.
that's where it really comes through, just like what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. All right, so let's talk a little bit further, and you touched on it just a little bit, but so really kind of where the rubber meets the road on culture is what we will tolerate or what we won't tolerate. And has there been a situation, maybe you can share with people, where there was somebody or some circumstance where you had to reinforce the culture and maybe had to make a tough decision, either policy or personnel, in order to show the team that no, culture is bigger than any individual or any particular circumstance?
Yeah, I think I've talked about team as part of our culture, and that again, sometimes being a challenge when you have to make changes. And for me, some of the harder things to make sure people knew I was aligned and committed to the team is when you have to make tough changes in personnel. And that is sometimes one of the other pieces of our culture is really a growth mindset, wanting everybody to flourish and be able to grow. And sometimes you can see where sometimes it's time for people to move on. They're going to grow, but they're just not going to grow within this organization. And they may be stifling the growth of others. And so at times when I've had to make changes like that, you can see the heartburn within the team. We're a team, we're a family. Wait, I didn't understand this. And then as time moves on, I promise those people always end up right where they're supposed to be, typically, and hopefully in a better spot. And then the individuals that are left there, it's like, oh, I get it now. And I have this opportunity to grow because we had to make some changes. Those decisions are never easy, never taken lightly, but that can feel like, wait, is that aligned with our team, family value, culture?
Yeah. 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 And I think that, when I talk to other leaders, sort of that embracing the reality of that change needs to happen is such a key part of it, and not delaying that aspect of it. Because the longer we delay something we know we needed to do, it just sort of compounds the issue down the road.
Yeah, and one of my first, things I did when we had this reboot into active was making some changes, and it was a little bit of a heartburn for some folks, and it was exactly that, to saying we're delaying the inevitable, and it's not good for anyone on either side of the fence, right? Like it's good for that person to move on and know that this, there's something that's a better fit out there. And the team to be clear on, where we're going in the direction, and what we need from the team moving forward in the organization. So it's, yep, sometimes just making those tough decisions and not delaying on it. And it's hard when your culture is team and family. It's very hard to do that.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. So let's talk a little bit about trust now. So we talk about trust as being the foundation for everything going forward. All our relationships that are successful and meaningful and productive are based on trust. So you talked a lot about family and how you've done that. So
Yeah.
how do you weave, or how do you reinforce the trust element into the culture element, and as it relates to building relationships?
Yeah. I mean, I think I look at my role as the leader is I have to set the example. And I think the first piece of building trust is just show up when you say you're going to be there, when you need to be there, when things are difficult, show up. And I think that the team knows that about me. It's like, I'm never going to send you into a situation where you don't feel like, you're able to, or it's tough to navigate, or you need that extra support. And, so it's showing up, and then I think it's being transparent, right? So
Mm,
one of the things I think is very challenging about the workforce today is really this level of resiliency through trying situations, right? We've become a situation of, well, this is hard, or it doesn't feel good, or like rising above some of the immediate stress or challenges. And so I try to be very transparent with the people I work with. If something feels difficult or stressful, it's not about me hiding that, it's about me showing you how I get through that, right? So helping to navigate and showing that, yes, there are some aspects of our jobs that are not fun or difficult, but, instead of shying away from it, or I'm not having, the best day, or I've got something else personally, but how do you show up and move it forward, even in the face of those challenges? And I think it's our job as leaders to set that example.
yeah, no, that's awesome. So it sounds like, being maybe just another word to encapsulate that is showing some vulnerability. It sounds
Mhm.
like, whether it's, yeah, just being real, that, yeah, this is tough, and authenticity, that, right, it's tough, but we're going to get through it, and being able to model that for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, I've worked with a lot of the folks I've worked with for, 20 years or more. And so we've all seen each other have kids, and kids graduate from, high school and college. And, you have these personal bumps along the way. And it's about, well, when do I need to step away because those struggles or something I'm facing is big, and right, knowing you're going to have that support and that trust. And then when do I show, okay, yep, that's going on, but I'm still here, and we've got it, and we're doing, and that balance. And, I've had team members call me and say on the weekend, this is happening, and I've got my parent, or whatever it might be. And it's like, what do you need? I got you. The team's got you. And honestly, most times they never miss a beat. They just need to know that I can be vulnerable. I can tell you what's going on. And if I need you, you will be there and you will step in. But chances are, when you have that rapport and that relationship with somebody, they actually aren't going to miss much, if anything. It's just they need to know that if they do, you've got their back.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful, Michelle. Very well put. So you've got a team that you've been together a long time. Let's talk about conflict, right? Because that's our next thing. Being able to have healthy conflict is an important part for a team to really get to good answers because people
Yeah.
aren't going to agree on everything. And really getting to great answers is everyone being able to speak their piece and to be able to be honest.
Yeah.
And, you know, I hear a fair amount in organizations where people tend to want to be polite. They're afraid to sort of say what they really mean, and then we lose out on opportunity. So let's talk about how in the organization you've been able to foster healthy conflict where people can speak their opinions without worrying about retribution or being criticized or anything like that to be able to get to good decisions.
Yeah, I think, we don't think of ourselves as a top-down organization. We think great ideas bubble up from, every level, and that we want open door communication. We want to foster ideas and creative, but at some point, I think we have this great balance of everybody's opinion is welcome, it's needed, it's valid. And there is still some chain of command and some hierarchy that at the end of the day, when it's time to make the decision, the expectation is we've all had a chance to collaborate and speak our mind, and then we will move forward. There can be times where, some of those debates get, sort of to a healthy level. And I mean, I can tell you a funny story. Our CTO, Mike Rucker, and I don't know, for years we went round and round, and now we always joke about how well aligned we are and how, we could probably finish each other's sentences. But yeah, there was one meeting where he and I were getting our usual banter about right solutions, and he said, "I just want permission to treat you as a hostile witness." And I said, "Sure, go for it. Let's get it all out." But you have to have trust, and you have to know that at the end of the day, wherever the decision ends up or it lies, that, people are going to move it forward and execute on it. And like you said, it's a healthy conflict, and, that you can be honest, and, that he'll have my back, I'll have his back at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, perfectly said. That's awesome. All right, so for somebody watching this who feels like maybe their team culture isn't where they would like it to be, what would be your recommendation for him or her to a place to get started?
Yeah. At first I'd say, what is it you want? What is the grounding element of your culture? For us, we really think it's team collaboration, executing and operating somewhat like a family. And then how do we stay true to that? So what's the foundation you want in your culture? And then what's happening, again, back to climate on a day-to-day basis? So is it that you're not happy with your culture, or things that are going on right now in the moment, or how people are showing up, or how people are, being true to that culture is actually the problem. So I think it's really knowing, where's your starting point? What do you want? And then, what are the behaviors that might be getting in the way of that are not aligned?
Okay. All right, great. All right, well, this has been wonderful. Do you have any final thoughts or suggestions or notes just to close this up?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the final thought I would say is, the biggest thing I can say is bringing it back to just consistency showing up, and, open lines of communication.
Well, very nice. Yeah, Michelle, this was wonderful. Tons of great insight that you gave us, and can see why Active Wellness is doing so well with you at the helm. So thank you for spending the time with us today.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. I appreciate the offer to come on and talk.
All right, cool. Thanks. Hold on.